Hey guys, today's gonna be instructional on how to install a reservoir for pretty much any types of water feature you might want to do. So today we're going to be installing 3 spheres, really cool kind of contemporary look. We're down in beautiful San Marco. So we're going to be currently working over in this section of the yard. Nick, Sammy, and Mark here have gotten the area prepped for us. So this was just grass. They got all the grass taken out. We're about to lay out the aqua block. This is if you're doing a little more custom. You're basically putting in like a rainwater harvesting cistern underneath the ground here, but we're not gonna do it in a sense that you can drive on top of. It's gonna be much more easy. We're gonna be using the things you see in the back there called the aqua blocks. They create a void space, a rubber liner to hold the water. And this allows you to make a bigger splash area collecting more water. So when we're gonna do these 3 spheres, they're gonna take up quite a bit of space for the splash that happens. So you need something bigger than the standard Aquascape 45-inch by 45-inch aqua basin. The splash radius we're gonna have on this is easily gonna be 12 feet by 12 feet. So we can really get it ripping and roaring. So a lot of the features you guys see us do, we'll have 2-inch pipe coming up so we can really flood it with lots of water, and that's what's gonna happen with this one. So if you guys are at home wanting to do something like that, even if you wanna take a traditional concrete fountain, going back to that, you can do a traditional concrete fountain. If you have the last bowl overfill into this, the purpose and why this works better is that all the water is stored underground. So the sunlight can't hit it. So all the features that we put in, we try to do that to where everything can pretty much just dry out. So we have a little hard water here in Jacksonville. That's the biggest problem we run into, is just the white calcium deposits that happen. But for the best part about algae and green water, you can just turn this thing off and it completely dries out all the water stored underground. So there's nothing that you have to clean or throw bleach into constantly. Some people might do that on something like this. At home, my kind of features, nope, I just turn it off for a couple days. All the algae dies and flip it back on. So yeah, I think that's enough info. Let's just get into the mechanics of how you do this. That's the whole purpose of this video for you guys today, is how you build a water feature like Earthworks would. So if you're doing something where you're just gonna sit on top of the ground, it's a different story. You might be able to move around pretty easily. This reservoir, before you start digging and put it somewhere, you have to figure out where the actual water feature is going to be. We have the 3 spheres in this situation, so really great big space. A lot of times you're trying to jam a water feature into a smaller space. We've got a landscape plan that we go off of. We've got everything to scale of where this water feature is supposed to go, right? So big center cutout with jasmine around it so the dogs can run, trample everything and not hurt a darn thing. So they're measuring out where it's supposed to go by the design. And anytime you guys do this at home, there's always a plan, and you got to be willing to modify. So as soon as Nick gets this figured out where it's supposed to go centered, we're going to set this up and see if it actually works with the space, or if we just got to tweak it. Because sometimes it's your eye that's more important than going by that first original plan. You know, that's the first thing you want to do. Just dry set it and look at it. So now we know the orientation, we know about the exact placement, we're good to go. All right, so now Nick's going to start laying out the blocks. So Mark and Sammy, they're just going to start a choo-choo train of laying out the blocks. We've got our diameter spray painted out with exactly what kind of space we want it to take up. This is going to be the splash radius. So there's also a design concept here. This is all going to get graveled and jasmine around it. So now it's good to go, right? We now have a square, a rectangle spray painted out. Just for clarity, the circle is still our end result, right? So the circle is going to be a composite edging material that we use. So this is going to be a very clean, contemporary graveled section with a ground cover growing around it. So it's going to be very organic on the outside of the circle and inorganic on the inside. So it's going to create this really cool contrast. The purpose of the circle is just the end vision. That's going to be the end vision of where the gravel ends. This system is what we're digging out now. So the circle we're not even going to look at again until we have everything kind of built out. We got everything spheres in, and then we're just putting a composite edging around the entire thing. See, this circle might move 3 inches this way or that way because we might have the arrangement of those spheres. Once we've got those, that becomes our new center point. This goes into more design landscape stuff, not water feature, but that's why you're looking at a rectangle at this point. And now you're just gonna see us dig a bunch. You saw us with the string level running across there. We were just doing a quick check. Usually we'll use a transit, something like that. Pro contractors and things would use transits. Something like this, you can, if you've done enough times, you can eyeball it. As long as you know the top of your aqua block is gonna be lower than the surrounding area, you're good. So that's what we were just doing. So we threw 1 aqua block in and realized we were about 4 inches lower than our elevation that we're going for is the sidewalk. We were about 4 inches lower than that. So we're gonna go for 6, so we took it back out and dropped it down. So now that aqua block's gonna be 6 inches lower than everything else in there. And you'll see what that means later on. I'm just pointing it out at this point. Now, they've also come in here and leveled the entire area. So when we put these aqua blocks in, we want them as level as can be with a slight pitch. You guys saw our arrangement earlier. Our vault is gonna go here. I'll get into these pipes here in a second. Our vault's gonna go on this end. So you want, if anything, just a slight pitch going this direction. So all the gunk and stuff will end up in that vault. This is life. You see the pipes we got. So we're about to go ahead and cut these bad boys open and see if any of them are live. We've got a meter on the other side of the fence, so we're anticipating one is going to be live. So we're gonna dig them out and just cut nice and slow and see if we got any pressure in here. Regardless, we gotta reroute it. So, and that's just part of it. We ran into quite a few roots digging, but for the most part, easy digging. So we got done digging the hole, hole's dug, we got the elevation we like the elevation, and we put the aqua blocks back in to figure out where the vault was going. So we could place that and recess that about 6 inches lower so that the front part of this vault, so this part of the vault here is gonna be recessed. The bottom of the aqua blocks will be at this elevation, and that way we gain all that space. So every bit of water that's in between these aqua blocks gets utilized. So that aqua block is going to sit like this, right? So the bottom part now, the vault will be the lowest part. So every bit of this water has to end up in there, utilizing it all. If we put the aqua block flush with it, now we've lost that because every pump that we use usually needs somewhere between 6 to 8 inches of water to actually function. So we're just checking it, right? So we got our vault where we want it. Now when you go to install this, the aqua block can fit right on top of it like that. We have an extension for that as well, so we'll bring that up there in a second. So that's kind of the middle ground. A lot of people are gonna be like in the middle of installing one of these and not know what the heck to do. Well, that's it. And you kind of see our pipes now. Our pipes are cut. Water's turned off because we have to get this installed real quick. So right now, Miss Katie over there has no water in her house. So we gotta get this done pretty quick so we can get this all back up and running. See that all the way down there? Well, that is about a 1920, 1950 old metal pipe sewage. And she had talked about it this morning that she had just gotten her plumbing completely redone in the home. And when this came out this morning and it was old, decrepit looking, we just assumed, okay, they just abandoned that, left it in the ground. No, we just got the water hooked back up for her and it comes out there. So that's kind of a big issue. So we're gonna have to see if this will still fit and the plumbers can redo what they need to, because actually the plumbers were able to do from the home in. So from the home entry, from there all the way out, it's still some older plumbing. Currently, you see we have a lot of stuff going on right here. What we have so far, we are just backfilling 2 sides. But before I get into that, when we install this, the bottom of the dirt hole we have, it gets lined with underlayment, okay? So we got 2 layers here just because we had to cover the whole hole. They're about 7.5 foot wide, right? We got a 20 by 20 piece of liner, and I think we've got 2 7.5 by 20 pieces of underlayment. And then on top of the liner is another piece of fabric, okay? Another piece of underlayment. So it's sandwiching the liner, protecting it, because the aqua blocks that are here are good, but they have plastic corners, and so we're just being safe and protective over it all. It's doubly protected. The underlayment on the outside has a different purpose than on the inside. The outside, it's protecting it from root growth, any gas bubbles that come up through the earth, has a spot that it can actually escape instead of creating a gas bubble underneath the liner. And so that's what we're doing. So what we're starting with is we are backfilling both sides. So we're backfilling this side and this side at the same time. So that way we don't shift everything one way or the other. Because these plastic blocks are lightweight, they'll move so easily. Once we backfill those 2 sides, then we'll flip the liners back over and then do these 2 sides. Once we got that done all the way to the top, then we start filling it with water just in case it's gonna rain tonight. We want more water inside the reservoir, holding everything down, especially until we get all of our rock and stuff on top of it. While we're waiting for the plumbing company to come by, they were able to get one by here today, which is very convenient. We are gonna be working on the balls, the spheres. These spheres need to get drilled up for 2 things, right? We've already got a hole cut out. Aquascape always comes with this really cool poly pipe stuff, which all you have to do is just recess this down through the hole and this thing catches perfectly in the Aquascape fitting. But it's like 3/4 inches, and 3/4 inches doesn't allow the water we're planning on getting come out of these spheres. So we chuck those and we do custom plumbing. Just thin wall, 2-inch PVC. It doesn't have to be special crazy because we're here in Florida. It's probably different up in northern states. Just a standard 2-inch PVC pipe that we're gonna fit this pipe through that hole with just a little bit of space. And so all we do is just put a little foam around it. It's not waterproof. You might have a little drip come down through it, but with a volume of water having probably 2,000 to 3,000 gallons per hour coming out of that, we don't care if we have a drip. Second thing we do, can I see that, Nick? Yep. Perfect timing. Second thing we do is a custom light installed at the top. These are not things that you can have Aquascape do for you. So this is specific to these spheres, also the urns. So we are going to, basically we have a side hole that we cut as well. Nick's cool, he puts like tape on it and make sure it's a custom cut, because these things can scratch up pretty easily, so you gotta be kind of careful about that. It's easy enough to repair. We use like some waterfall foam and disguise them, because you don't even notice anything when it's wet. But this guy fits in perfectly, and we put just a slight bead of foam around it, because this is completely full in water. So this is actually gonna be underwater, and there'll be a little geyser right on top. So this whole thing will be lit up. And we're doing this where the 3 spheres will be on one hub. It's color lighting. So this will be one hub, so you can actually have the color at the top different than the colors down the bottom, lighting it up. You guys see the arrangement of the spheres are pretty much the same. I really like how they did it a little bit more obtuse. You can always do these so many different ways, right? You can take these balls and bring them in tighter so you get more of a perfect triangle. Right now they're a little bit more obtuse, because if you think about it, you know, this out here is gonna be the most perfect view. You come in the driveway and see it, everything's spread out. But I think what Nick also did is the perspective of the homeowner looking from inside the kitchen, because this view right here is gonna be great looking outside the home. She gets to see all 3 spheres now looking out. And if you would have tightened it up, you might have lost that small one. So really cool. I love the placement. There's still a couple more things I wanna show you guys here. We're gonna be doing here in a second. You guys can see the plumbing. Let's start with that. So you got your vault. From the vault is the check valve. From the check valve goes out into our little ball valve manifold. So you guys see right there, we've got 3 ball valves. So when it comes out, we take a sharp 90. It was a little too tight to make that curve naturally, and it goes straight through. The biggest sphere we always have with the least amount of tension. So the 2 smaller spheres, the medium and the small, they come off of a T off the main line, which creates a little tension on the water. The direct flow goes straight to the biggest that you have. It's the same thing if you're doing waterfalls and multiple waterfalls. We'll have the biggest waterfall have a straight line go straight to it. And you notice here that actually the biggest one, the ball valve's completely open, and the smaller one, mostly closed off. The medium one is somewhat closed off. And this, by the way, guys, this is a 4,000 to 8,000 pump. So when you see this thing running, you'll see what it looks like. So you basically have 8,000 gallons per hour. You can divide up however you want. You could have 4,000 gallons coming through this one, and the other 2 and 2 coming here. And that's kind of what it probably is gonna look like when it's turned on. This is gonna be the rip and roaring one, and then you got the 2 smaller ones. That's all gonna be the same you set up for all different types of water features. So if you're doing 3 water pots here, so you go to a garden center and find some glazed pots, you drill at the bottom, put a bulkhead fitting in, it's the same concept. But when you're doing spheres or urns, these are hollowed, okay? So they're hollowed out. Ideally, the top part, it twists and comes off. So you've got this 2-inch pipe sitting right here. It stubs up out of this thing and you foam it, right? So you're just foaming it because you don't want water going down there at a rapid rate, but you don't really care that much if you lose a little bit of water. So this guy's set up to where it's gonna come out, fill this entire area, create a geyser, and then spill over. And same thing, they're gonna silicone this light in place. They haven't gotten there yet. That's the next step, is they're gonna silicone this light. You can kind of see, pull it right out. This thing fits perfectly. When you're gonna do this at home, guys, we use 2-inch pipe. The same bit we use for the 2-inch pipe to cut through there, there's no bulkhead fitting. The pipe's just sticking straight out, and there's a little gap around the 2-inch pipe that we fill with the foam. Same thing here. This Aquascape light, the 3-watt Aquascape light, fits perfectly in that diamond bit 2-inch cutout we have. And so all we have to do is put a little silicone to hold it in place, because it can angle up or down a little bit. So we want to get it perfectly where we want it and hold that place. How do you get that pipe up through there? So Nick has a really good concept. He came up with himself.
So what I like to do is take the 90, because at the bottom of these you have your flex pipe come in and your hard pipe 90s up, and that's what he was just talking about, what you get foamed. Now what I do is I'll set it on the aqua block exactly how it would be, and you measure to the top of where the pipe would sit in, the furthest seat that it could go. There's a little line right there and a lip. So I determined that that was 2.5 inches. So then what I did is I measured down the hole that I cut with my 2-inch drill bit and measured that out. Whatever that is, you subtract your 2.5 inches, and then I add 1/4 inch so that it's above the lip a tiny bit, so you can have something to foam to. And that's the best way to do it. And then what I also like to do is figure out about how much distance it is from your 90 to your ball valve, and you cut a little bit extra, and you go ahead and glue that into your 90 with your hard pipe. So when you tip this back to get your hard pipe up in the middle, you already have your flex glued. So you're not affecting your pipe, or it makes it easier to glue this flex into your 90. So that's how I would recommend you do it if you're gonna do this at your house.
Because my first question for Nick was, how the heck did you cut that right there? Because most people are just gonna stick that pipe in, glue it, it's gonna be sticking up here, and then just cut the residual off. But just keep that in mind, guys, at home if you're doing this. Don't try to do that, because you really can't get anything in here to actually cut that. And if you are, you're gonna bang up this thing, which you gotta remember, this is not meant to be banged into. This is not real stone, right? So you can scratch this and damage this pretty easily. Next steps are gonna be, we have to go ahead and kind of excavate out that perfect circle. So this is just more of the decorative look we're going for. So Nick and them now have to pull the liner back up and excavate out for that circle where it's gonna go and get the right elevation. And then they're gonna be installing a bunch of gravel. We install the aqua blocks a little lower than need be, because if anything, I don't wanna have them to be too high. So we use some aqua blocks just to artificially lift that, and then we use the gravel to fill in. You can always put a little extra gravel in and be fine. So when you do that, you're always gonna get these a little off kilter. So when you first install it, before you do all this plumbing stuff, you gotta check the level. So you're gonna put a level across the top of it, probably 2 or 3 different directions, and make sure it's perfectly level. The reason you're doing that is you want the water coming over all 3 sides perfectly level. But the problem people run into is they check it the first time they put it there. Now you're putting the pipe through it, you've moved it. Now you're foaming something, you're drilling, you're gonna move it a bunch of times. You guys gotta keep checking it to make sure it's level. So before they put the gravel in, they check it one more time. Gravel's installed, the final gravel grade, check it one more time. So we're setting them up so they're perfectly level all the way across. So no matter what direction you are in this yard, you're gonna get the same effect. We're gonna be doing some really cool rock work. So we're gonna be doing some chunks and boulders that wrap through here in front of those ball valves so that we can actually backfill this side of it. Because you see that this vault is a little taller. That's always kind of like, oh, what do I do? Well, don't just fill gravel up all the way, you just lost that sphere. So we're gonna do some rock work in front of all this so that this backside can be a little higher with gravel, and then underneath will be a little bit lower. And then the same thing will actually come to this side, because the grade's actually falling from that direction to this direction, and we'll do some rock work here as well to kind of give it that somewhat balance but not complete symmetry, and it's gonna look really cool. Lastly, a little tip when installing this reservoir, you can kind of see right now that this corner is kind of folding over on the aqua blocks. I'm not sure if you can see it from there. You might have to come from here, look, because this, you can kind of see the aqua block corner right there. Well, what's happening is there's too much dirt, a little too high right here. So this is kind of folding over. It's not a big deal right this second, but once you put rock and stuff on it, you've created this pinch. So with liner, you gotta be really careful not to do that. So the guys actually have to go ahead, that's the next step, is getting the grade set. So they're gonna get that grade set before they gravel everything, and that's it right there. So lower that down 2 or 3 inches lower than the top of this aqua block, then you got plenty of room. You can just fill that in with gravel. It'll just create safety. The corners of the aqua blocks are the biggest spots you should watch out for. And this whole top ledge, any of this liner can fold over. You don't want that, so you gotta bring this back down. So we raised it a little bit too tall. Not a big deal, lift it up, fix it. So when you guys have the reservoir completed, all the aqua blocks are installed, you've backfilled your sides, one thing you wanna do before you go home at night, and Sean and I can attest to this, one of the biggest reservoirs we put in early on, probably more like 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, the aqua block setup, we spent all day getting this basin installed. It was such a big one, it took us the entire day to install it. Well, the problem is it rained a lot that night. And so what happened was water collected, the liner was folded up on top of the aqua blocks, and no water could actually get into that. And so it all filled the sides and made the hydrostatic pressure was enough, and it pushed the entire system up. So once this is all fully installed, whether this is empty or not won't be a big deal. But in that situation with no water inside of it, so that's why the first night when you get done with this, you wanna fill it up a quarter of the way, half the way, depending on the situation you're in. If you're not worried about water like that, if you're building really close to the groundwater table, definitely fill it up. Right now, they've got it easily 3/4 of the way filled up. So there's probably somewhere around 400 gallons worth of water in here, which good to go. Typically don't overfill it too much, because once you put your gravel and stuff in, you're gonna wanna rinse and suck all that water out, right? So it's just easier to keep it a little full, just don't leave it empty. That's a big tip. Another small thing about the plumbing that I didn't mention before is Aquascape has the check valve. I talked about the check valve. This makes it so easy on the inside. When you have to do large aqua blocks like we didn't do small, you have to add an extension. So this has one extension on it for the large aqua blocks. That extension makes it to where you have to actually cut. If you didn't do that, this check valve fits perfectly inside here. Now they just had to cut a little small piece of pipe underneath it, but everything else just goes together, screws together, super, super simple. Hooked up to our 4,000 to 8,000 variable speed pump, which will be hooked up to her phone by the end of this.